Here's some potential hope. Let's turn our attention to Ukraine. Donald Trump says peace talks to end the war are going to begin immediately. The US president held phone calls with both Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelenskyy yesterday. He agreed to visit the Russian leader in Moscow and host him in the States. But Ukraine shouldn't expect to get back all of the territory it's lost to Russia. Trump told reporters it's unlikely Ukraine would return to borders it had before Russia invaded Crimea in 2014. I watched this extraordinary press conference that he gave where he answered a lot of questions. This has been a long time coming. Is it a little bit of hope, at least for less Ukrainian young men and less Russian soldiers to be dead?
If the fighting's going to end, I think that is hope, and there'll be fewer people being maimed and killed. But it's not hope if Ukraine just has to surrender near 20% of its territory and basically be betrayed by Trump. And Putin wins. He's shed a lot of blood on both sides, but he wins if he retains the territory he's grabbed. How would we feel in the UK if we'd been invaded and all of a sudden the Americans said, right, you're going to have to give up Cornwall and Wales and Devon?
Well, it's quite a lot of other things that he said as well in that press conference, not least that he didn't think that Vladimir Zelenskyy was going to win the election that he has to have, which was a very interesting marker to the rest of the world.
But you just see Trump's treatment of...
Sorry, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, forgive me.
Yeah, sorry, but you see Trump's treatment of Putin, who seems to be all over like a rash now. Joe Biden, I think, was quite right, calling him a murderous tyrant. That's Putin, not Trump. But they're two authoritarian white nationalists who have a lot in common, and Trump seems to treat people like Putin better than he does the Canadians, the Mexicans, European countries. He wants Greenland from Denmark. He says Canada should be a 51st state. He seems to be all over despots, and yet allies, democratic allies, get the sharp end of his tongue.
Well, Esther, is that right? Or is it the fact that, Trump is, like him or not, the type of strongman character who knows how to speak Putin, and certainly could have done that, some might argue, better than the alternative?
Well, in order to understand what's going on, you have to understand Trump. Trump is a utilitarian through and through, and he's made it very clear that his priorities are the US, the US, the US. This idea that he's betraying Ukraine, well, the US never made a commitment to Ukraine to do things that's against the Americans' interests in order to save Ukraine, quote unquote. And he's been very blunt about that. Now, of course, it's not practical or reasonable to completely withdraw support from Ukraine. You have to put them in the best bargaining position. However, if you are Egyptian and the price of your staple foods like wheat has increased by 150% because of this war, has inflated over the course of this war, you are very keen for this war to end. If you are Turkish, for example, and your inflation level is in the high double digits, you want this war to end. There is more to consider.
Let's come back
than just the feelings of Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
I hear you, if we can, Kevin, because the reality is there's 43,000 Ukrainian soldiers, most of them young men, and hundreds of thousands of Russians. I was watching Donald Trump, and the one thing he's right about is the number of dead on both sides. And the reality is both sides, and certainly Ukraine, are going to have to give. Perhaps the most important point he made was to say, listen, J.D. Vance is coming to meet you along with Marco Rubio, and you can forget ever joining NATO.
Yeah, Trump spoke of millions dead, which of course is his usual exaggeration. You kind of expect that. And I think the end of the war would be a great thing. I think a better thing would have been the war had never started. And the bit spoken out loud now, which is often not said, is Ukraine can't win in the sense of being strong enough to push out a larger neighbour from the land it has occupied. But given Trump says it's the art of the deal, I'm a great negotiator, he's already given away Ukraine's not going to come into NATO. He's already given away territory that isn't his own. So that's not hope. That is Putin winning. The only good thing to come out of all this death and destruction is Russia is taking something of a beating, so it hopefully deters them doing it again. But since 1941, when the US entered the Second World War, they've seen that their security is linked to the security of Europe, and he's abandoning
Well,
that.
in addition to that, he's also said all of the money that they've advanced to Ukraine for weapons and stuff, they want something back for in return, minerals, etc. We see, whatever happens, the one thing that he's right about, and whether you're Trump or not, is we all kind of pray for peace in the region, that's for sure.